I could ask you about your helicopter trip.
You could ask me about my helicopter trip, but I'd want to punch you in the face.
Why would you want to do that?
Because it got cancelled until tomorrow.
So you must have had a good day off on Friday then.
Can we change the subject, please?
All right, then. How about we announce our winner from our little competition during the week?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, so last week we had a 12-month subscription on offer from Australian Photography magazine. Quite a few entries, but definitely one again that stood out and made both of us laugh and actually smile for quite a while as well. So yeah, we'd like to congratulate Phil and Steph from Adventure Begins Here for their photo of a squirrel, and I think it's Lake Moraine, is it? That's the one. And definitely. Look, I think it's okay to have squirrels in pictures. Squirrels are cool. People are not. Yeah, and this guy seems to be posing a bit for it as well. Yeah, no, he looks pretty happy, pretty cool. He liked to be in that picture, I think. So, look, congratulations, Phil and Steph, for your photo this week. I'm still smiling for that one. Yeah, and a big thank you to Australian Photography magazine for giving away our listener a 12-month subscription. And yeah, I hope they get as much enjoyment out of the magazine as I do. For sure. Now we've got a episode sponsor again this week. This is a 3-part prize we're going to offer, a first, second and third prize from Created for Life. Yeah, they're a printing and framing company in the Central Coast in New South Wales. They've generously offered a 40-inch, a 30-inch and a 20-inch print for our listeners, and we'll give that away to what we decide to be a first, second and third, and that can be a print of their choice. So just one of their own photos they can get printed from Creative for Life. Creative for Life are a great company. I use them for my printing or my metallic pearl prints. I believe some of the exhibition that you had up at Monash University, or Monash Hospital, was all done with Creative for Life printing? Yes, all their acrylic face mount printing there. So there was 32 prints done, all quite large. They were 40-inch and 36-inch prints, and they were all done from Creative for Life. They did a fantastic job, and anyone who actually went and saw the exhibition, they could see just how good quality their printing and products are. So thank you very much to Creative for Life for being this week's episode sponsor. Yeah, so look, on Instagram, same thing again. Hashtag us and mention us. It must be a new post from the time that we put up our post announcing the competition on Instagram. So the first prize will get a 40-inch print, second prize 30-inch, and third prize 20-inch. Now, this will be a print of your choice of your own images. I've got to say that when you see your own pictures in print, it's actually quite a good feeling too. So I don't print as much as I probably should, but if I was offered a 40-inch print for free, I probably would. Yeah, and this is open to our Australian entrants as well, and also be sure to follow us on Instagram as well. Cool. This week, or last week, actually, while we were recording, the Epson Panel Awards were announced. I actually got a little distracted during the recording because I had a notification pop up in my email as we were talking and chatting away. And that was right at the end of our recording as well, so we probably would have discussed it, but we would have gone well over time then. Absolutely. There's some crazy, awesome shots in this year's top 50. There's some incredible shots. I think this year's probably the best set of images that I've seen out of all the years of following and watching the panel awards. So some of these shots within the open category or open landscape category, amazing. I mean, I don't know what else to say about them. They just blew my mind away. So it's definitely, you just go through the top 50 in any of the categories, even whether it's the open category for nature or built, and also for the amateur category as well. And there's not a single photo in there that you could say doesn't deserve to be there. They're just phenomenal images. Yeah, definitely a great mix of shots as well. I mean, just the winner, Alex Noriega. There's just little branches poking out of the snow. I wonder how deep that snow actually is. I mean, there's not many descriptions, or there is no descriptions on the actual prizes themselves, on the images themselves. So you can only kind of imagine how deep that snow is with the little branch spikes poking out.
Yeah, they kind of look like they could be the tops of tall trees or just smaller trees as well. Or but just the softness and the texture of that snow and this little few things poking out. Some of them are a little tipped over, and then just this one central one that's just standing like a spike in the middle. It's just, amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And his second entrance in the open category. I mean, this is one of your favourites.
So he's got second place as well, which is a fantastic achievement. And if you have a look at this one, it's this. It's kind of hard to tell the scale of this, whether it's quite a large area or just something small, but it's a blue, fairly textured mountainside or side of a cliff. You've got this tiny little red area in the bottom left that stands out and just adds this little extra feature to the blue.
Yeah, no, we'll be linking to all of these images too from the episode notes. So if you're listening along with us, just click on the links within the episode guide. You'll be able to see the images we're talking about. Now in the open, what is it? Open building,
built environment. So
the built environment. This little tiny, looks almost like a watchtower sticking out of the water. You can almost imagine that like an old castle has been flooded there and sticking out of the lake. It's probably not the case. I'm not even sure where this is, but it looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, there's nice reflections, just simple and soft image, nice bright cloudy sky as well, and just very gentle and very calming.
I was trying to look to see if the reflection had been photoshopped, but it hasn't. I mean, it's pretty clearly not equal or not, there's not symmetry within the image. So it's pretty impressive shot. I quite like it. I reckon that'll look pretty impressive and cool hanging up on your wall.
Definitely.
So I mean they're the winners, but I mean we've got our own favourites within the panel awards as well. I mean, I think these awards are so judgmental, or how do you say, open to your own personal likings. I mean, which images did you like best?
I had a few that I liked besides the winning ones from Alex Noriega. There was one that stood out mainly because it wasn't a landscape, and this is an image or cropped image of a statue of Hermes, I think it is. I could be wrong. I'm just going by the wings on the hat, but it's a very clean. All the detail seems to come out of the shadows of this statue. And it's just a great example of how, for the Panel Awards, which usually associated with landscapes of some form or another, you can have this image, which is technically a panorama just from its ratios, but it's not a landscape, and it's still just a beautiful image.
It is pretty impressive. I wonder if it's natural lighting on that, or whether there's any kind of artificial lighting been introduced into this scene.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell whether it's done in a studio or just taken from wherever it is. But it's just got a nice white, clean background, and very simple.
Did you notice the crack behind the ear or behind the wing?
No, I didn't notice that crack.
Look a bit hard.
I could see it now. Yeah.
Cool. Any others that you liked?
Another one I liked from the built, which is also in the amateur category as well, is a almost bird's eye view looking down a central building complex, and it's just got a row of apartments, I guess, that are lit up, and on either side. So this is a vertical panorama. And either side, we've got two open windows with a man and a woman on opposite sides of this central area, looking across the gap between them. And it's just an interesting viewpoint and angle, and really well done, especially with the people sitting in the windows.
Yeah, definitely. I like the vertical panorama orientation. I think it works really well with this one, looking straight down. Obviously, well, I think it's been shot with a fisheye, but yeah, it's definitely kind of grabs your eye. Leading line straight to the middle, great perspective on it. So,
and I've got one more favourite, which was of a fishing area with lots of little sticks or poles sticking out of the water and a few boats just going through a central canal. Again, it's a bit hard to describe, but if you're able to, click the link and have a look at this one. It's really cool. It's really nice. I think with all the sticks, it almost looks like something's been done to it in post-production where it's had some motion blur added to it, but it just, with the amount of sticks, it just gives it that effect without actually having to do that in post-production.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of plays tricks on your eyes in the top left-hand corner or on the left-hand side of the image in particular, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool.
So what ones caught your eye?
All of them. Yeah. Pretty much. I would have been happy to take any one of those images or any image within the top 50 of any of the categories. But I love the stormtrooper on the sand dunes with the footprints. I love I'm going to assume that it's had some sort of post-production to remove some footprints out of it somewhere, but I just love the clean line of the footprints, but also the wind kind of blowing the sand off the top of the peaks. It just looks really cool. I love the shadow. I love everything about that shot. It's really cool, quite creative.
Yeah, it's a beautiful orange there as well, and just with the slight contrast with the tiny bit of bluishness to the person's clothes, maybe.
Yeah, well. I wonder how hot he was wearing a stormtrooper outfit in the middle of a desert. That was pretty impressive. But I love also the lightning bolts over Yosemite. So this would be
Grand Canyon.
Sorry, not Yosemite, the Grand Canyon. Sorry, guys, I haven't had a lot of sleeping in this weekend. But yeah, the lightning bolts over Grand Canyon it's just really impressive. Great shot. I love the mood in the sky. I love the layers of the mountains and. The lightning bolt's pretty cool. It's a nice shot.
Yeah, and some warm and cool tones there as well from looks like either a sunrise or sunset.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's a particular shot here, which is an abstract drone shot. I'm quite partial to my aerial shots. This one's really cool. It kind of looks, is it snow melting or what is it? I don't know. I keep staring at it. Every time I look at it, I just wonder, it's a really, really impressive shot. And again, as I say, we'll be linking to all of these, so you'll be able to see for yourself. If you haven't already looked at the Pano Award winners, then you definitely should go and check it out because there's some beautiful, beautiful images in this year's competition. So, we definitely recommend to check it out and even think about entering and challenging yourself to try and get photos that are up to these standards because they're absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I think most photographers aspire to take shots with this kind of quality. Very, very impressive selection this year.
And I guess something that does come up with the Pano Awards as well is whether they are a bit over-processed for some of them or over-photoshopped. And I don't think it really matters whether they are or they aren't. I mean, it's definitely not in the rules that they can't be, but they're just images that have been done so well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love it. I even love the VR category, the virtual reality category that's in there. It's, again, one of those growing categories. And to see a competition actually offering that up as a category within it is pretty cool to see as well. And I'm sure we're going to see that grow over the years when headsets become a little bit more popular.
So what's something that you definitely would not see in any of these images? Do you reckon you'd see any dust spots or anything?
Oh man, dust spots. I don't know. I'll have to have a bit of a closer look. But how annoying would that be if there was?
I don't think they'd make it to any of the top 50 if you saw just a dust spot or a hot pixel or anything in there.
Yeah, no, I that's something that definitely annoys me. Publishing an image somewhere and finding dust spots on it later. I don't know how many times I've done that myself. Thankfully, nothing that's too permanent that I can't fix most of the time. But I think sometimes maybe we look at our own images just a little bit too hard and just don't notice some things occasionally. But yeah, like I've even seen it recently on a couple of Tourism Australia Instagram features where I've looked and there's just blatantly obvious dust spots on images, which I'm sure the people who took it probably didn't expect Tourism Australia to pick it up and repost it. It frustrates me to no end to to go and put so much work into an image and then later on have look at it just that little bit harder and find just the tiniest little bit of speck or even a big speck just because you weren't really looking for it.
And these are things that are really easy to clean up and fix as well. And it can be done either at the start of your processing or at the end, or even both if you end up finding one later. And it seems like such a simple thing that could be fixed, and seeing it on images that people post when you know that they've done some sort of post-production, so it's not a straight out of the camera shot. It can look quite a bit unprofessional as well when that level of care hasn't been taken to just remove something so easy to remove.
Well, this is something. So Lightroom and Photoshop, obviously, both quite easy to remove dust spots. I find Photoshop easier. Or I wouldn't say easier, but probably a bit more better.
You've got several methods to remove dust spots, whereas I think there's just mainly the one in Lightroom.
With Lightroom, really, it's a clone, where it's just cloning another region around the image somewhere, which you can adjust. Whereas in Lightroom, you've got your proximity match and what are the other options?
Content aware, stamp tool, healing brush, spot removal.
Absolutely. Look, I've seen some good tutorials around where about kind of inverting images or making them more of a negatized image to make dust spots stand out. There's plenty of ways to actually do it to remove it, but man, it's so frustrating for me when I do it. I think, as I say, sometimes we look too hard at our own images and just don't notice some of these things as well. It really frustrates me when it happens.
You can get focused on how the image looks as a whole rather than just the finer details. But some of these things, especially hot pixels and dust spots in just flat looking skies, whether it's a long exposure or a blue sky, they tend to stand out a bit more. And they'll come up when you start adding more contrast or sharpening to an image. So sometimes it could be better to go over your image at 100% just to have a look for these things right at the end when you've either just saved it or you're about to save your image, just to give a final check to look for little imperfections like this. Because a great image can be ruined by one single dust spot, a sensor dust spot.
Yeah, I find using the Canon 5DS and 5DSR, it's actually got a dust deletion method on it. So you leave a lens cap on and take a shot, and it actually calculates where the dust spots are because it calculates imperfections across its own algorithmic calculations, I suppose. I've actually found that works really well in between sensor cleans. If you can actually have dust deletion data as one of the tools within the menu selections, so that's pretty cool. Cleaning your sensor and keeping your sensor clean, I mean, it's $99 for most shops to take your camera in every time, and I know myself, one lens change and you can get dust on there. I know you recently had the exact same thing happen in Sydney.
Trying to change a lens at the top of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, probably not the best place to open your camera to the elements with all the dust from the road and everything, but oh well, that happens.
Well, because you can get those little loose specks of dust through onto your sensor, and that's great, but then you can also kind of get the gummy, gooey stuff that builds up on the sensor over time, which is caused by moisture and humidity entering the camera, and if they get stuck with moisture and humidity, then you've really got to scrape it off, if you like, using your chemicals and your swabs to do it, whereas you can kind of remove some of the looser stuff with a little blower tool, or even the sensor cleaning mechanism where it vibrates the sensor slightly. But yeah, I mean, $99. I think camera shops make a ton of money off people who can't or won't do this for themselves. And it's something that I know about with electronics. You know, I've done a lot of stuff over the years with technology and electronic components and all sorts of things. But camera sensors are actually not hard to clean at all, and I think there's a lot of fear introduced into the photography industry about this. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you really wouldn't even know what the camera sensor looks like, you're better off not touching it yourself. But getting hold of a swab kit and a sensor cleaning kit is actually quite easy to do it yourself. I tend to do it myself now. I mean, I've got so many cameras, and I just don't want to spend $99 per sensor clean. It took me a little bit to do it the first time. I actually found that I was leaving little lint pieces behind off the swab. So I kind of discovered that you use 2 swabs, one for the wet component, wipe on, scrub your sensor. I wouldn't say scrub, we'll rub our sensor, clean, and then use a dry swab to clean it off and to take it. Now, in between, you take a shot before touching the sensor at all, so you can see where your dust spots are. Basically, take a shot of a white wall at a high ISO, just so you can kind of see where your spots are sticking out at f/22 if possible, just to get that depth of field in, because quite often if you're shooting at f/2.8 through to f/8, you might not even see dust spots. It's when you're shooting at narrower apertures or f/13 upwards that you actually start to see dust spots. So it's not hard to clean them, but yeah, if you know what you're doing, or if you're confident to do it, I mean, it's have a look on YouTube, or we'll even link to some of the products that I've used in the past to do so. But yeah, I mean, $99 for a camera store to do literally 10 minutes of work. It's somebody's making some good money there along the way somewhere.
One way to make your shots just look that little bit more professional or less unprofessional is just to give it that little look over. Only take a minute or two at 100% and make sure there's no dust spots or hot pixels or any little things on there that are going to distract from what could potentially be a fantastic image. So how about we have a little chat about 500px? Yeah,
cool.
Do you use 500px much?
Look, I've got an account, but I've never really figured it out. It's so for me, you never hear about professional 500pxs. Obviously there's money to be made within 500px, and you can sell your artwork through there. You can directly sell the files through 500px and make a cut, but it's not the same for me as Instagram or any other social platform where you can kind of just make money from making a single post. I mean, I've never really figured it out much. I know you use it a lot more than I do. It's a weird platform for me. I see a lot of what many people would call digital art, where it's almost bordering on not being photography anymore, which we've discussed in a prior episode. But I can't figure it out. Again, I've never really put any time into it. So, I mean, if you've got some tips for me, that'd be great.
Well, I mean, you just need to go to the popular page of 500px and you can instantly see it's basically a website for fantastic looking landscapes and beautiful looking women, whether it's a portrait or even sometimes just straight out nude photos of women. The idea behind it is to try and get your photos onto this popular page and to be in that top ranking area. And that can be quite difficult when you're up against photos where just glancing over it, it looks like a great image. So many people are liking it and clicking it. And
you said nude women, and I'm sorry, mate, I've just got distracted. I'm actually on there right now trying to find some of this. So
yeah, you can choose which categories are on the popular page as well. You can filter out certain things, or just look at landscapes, just look at sports, or black and white, or in some cases people or nude. Sometimes it can be that a lot of the front page is just filled with naked women, so that's not the best way to represent good photography.
I've just set 500px as my homepage.
There are certainly ways that you can try and improve your chances of being seen on 500px, if that is a platform that you want to have your images shown and represented. And one of the first things that you really need to do is only post your best work. Whereas something like Flickr, where you can upload just albums, or even Facebook, where you upload lots of images from the same thing, 500px is about showing only your best work and pretty much being a portfolio.
With no dust spots.
With no dust spots. Although I have seen some images get to the top page with dust spots all over them, and I don't understand how. A lot of people that would just post, say, 20 images of the same place during the middle of the day, and they're not really going to get much traction on those images. And the way you do get traction is by having people see them, like them, comment on them. And what that does is it attaches what they call a pulse to your image. And there's a few different stages for your image to actually get to the popular page. And that goes through a series of being fresh, so just recently uploaded. And then if it's starting to get a few likes and comments, it'll get moved to an upcoming section. And then from there, if it gets even more likes and comments, it'll be moved to the popular page.
So, I mean, how do you get the comments and things? So, do you just sit back and wait for people to come and find you, or are you actively doing something on the platform to help people find you?
Well, the way they've got it set up works well for anyone who wants to post an image, and that's through the different stages, so fresh and upcoming. So, anytime you post you post an image, it instantly gets put up on the fresh page, and this is ordered by the time that it was uploaded. So if you upload an image, your image will instantly be right up the top of this page. So anyone looking through there will see your image right up the top. But because a lot of people can be posting all kinds of images, if you post an image right before someone else posts 20 images of the same thing that look a bit dull, your image will get pushed down the line and it could get lost very quickly.
So the fresh page is a real-time feed. So it's kind of like just in order, chronological order of the most recent post.
Yes.
On the entire platform.
Yes. And
right.
So that's a great way to actually have your images seen as soon as you upload it.
But does the fresh, can you filter by a category?
Yes, you can also filter any of them via category.
So you can have fresh nudes and fresh landscapes.
Yes, you can have fresh nudes and fresh landscapes.
Awesome.
Right. So then if your image is getting liked and commented on and its pulse is increasing, once it gets to a pulse of 60, it will then get moved to the upcoming feed. And this is something that's also ordered chronologically. So once it gets to upcoming, it'll then again be up the top, and generally people will probably look at the upcoming feed because it can be a way of filtering out the fresh images that aren't so good. And it can be a way for people to see the images that are a bit better and starting to get some sort of traction or attention. And so this is another place where your image can then be seen and liked, commented on, and get a bit more attention. And once it gets to a pulse of 80, then it'll be moved to the popular section. But the popular section is categorized by a descending order from the highest pulse to the lowest pulse. So if your image doesn't really get too much attention and it only just gets to popular, then it can kind of get lost down the feed of the popular page and not really get up much higher than that.
So the key there would be to have a good follower base as well, to obviously have your images appearing for your followers.
Yeah, the follower count definitely helps, where if you've got a high following, you can easily get straight to popular and straight to the top page. But then again, those people with high followings do have high quality images as well. So they will get that attention that I guess they deserve in a way.
Yeah. So realistically, everything's based on the amount of engagement you get within 500px.
Yes. It can be a bit tricky. As I said, if you put an image up and then a few people post a lot of images and your image gets lost down the way, there are ways to try and get more attention to your feed and your most recent post, and that's to be engaging, because it is a social platform. So having a look through the upcoming feed or the fresh feed, finding photos that you like and commenting on them, liking them, and maybe people in return will also go and check out your thing.
Okay, so reaching out to other people and to other users, and kind of advertising to them that you are there, if you like, is a great way to kind of get that return engagement. Yeah,
it can be a bit time consuming. I mean, not every photo that you go and like and comment on, people will go and check out your thing. So if you're just starting out, it can take a bit of time to actually get that attention to your page.
Yep. Okay. So, I mean, as I say, a lot of the stuff that I see on 500px is highly edited and highly processed. So it's kind of not your happy snaps that you'll tend to find on Flickr or on Viewbug or any of those other platforms there. So yeah, I mean it's just kind of always been a really weird platform to me in terms of photography, and obviously it is the best of the best, or the best of your best images on there that do really well. We've got one photographer here in Tasmania in particular, who's quite successful on 500px. I actually found him on 500px and then found him on Instagram later. Incredible content, incredible images, and he obviously the platform's a lot more forgiving in the orientation or the sizing of the content you can post, whereas with Instagram I tend to find the highest engagement images are always going to be your portrait sized images or the 1080 by 1350 size images, where on 500px you can have images of all sizes, and a lot of it's going to be consumed through a computer screen more so than necessarily a mobile app.
Yeah, so it can be a little, I guess, less forgiving as well when you can look at an image quite large where it might look okay in a thumbnail, but then you have a look at it on a large computer screen and you're like, oh, actually, that's probably not as good as I originally thought. I mean, as you said, the images can look highly processed, or just they look like they've had a lot of attention done to them, and they may not be as close to the original image as they started out, but that's something you need to consider if you're wanting to actually have a following on 500px. Is your photography in the 500px style? And if it's not like that, there's not much point to trying to get attention on this platform.
Yeah, for sure. Again, as I say, it's a weird one in terms of social media for me. I tend to find it really is the graphic artists or the really, really great photoshoppers that kind of get more attention and more engagement across 500px, and platform I probably should have a look at and try to figure out a little bit more.
But even if you're not wanting to really get attention, it is a good place to have your best quality work up in a place where you can send people. If you don't have your own website up and running yet, it's a great portfolio site to just show your top quality work.
Okay, do you use Flickr anymore? Do you still use it?
No, I don't use Flickr at all anymore. I haven't found any real use for Flickr.
Yeah, that's a weird one for me as well. Like, it was great back in the day. I mean, before Instagram and probably even before Facebook, advertising really became great for gaining exposure. I mean, all the groups and the different levels and the awards and things that you used to get in Flickr, man, you spend almost a day on there just submitting your image to different groups and to different base. So it was such a time-consuming platform to use. So.
Yeah, you can get lost in Flickr without getting very much in return. But we'll put a couple of links up just for if anyone is interested in 500px and getting a good following on there, or how to improve your status on there. And we'll add a couple of links just to help out with that.
Cool. Speaking of image styles, we've had a great question come in over the week on our on Instagram. Actually, this one could be a bit controversial.
Yeah, it could be. We've had a couple of good questions, but one that definitely stood out was from Hamish Stubbs, and then seconded by Sam DeCrass. Sorry, Sam. The question was in relation to overblown skies in travel pics and the trend that seems to be standing out.
So we're talking the types of shots where the skies are white or the skies are super bright, the types of shots that most photographers try to avoid ever shooting. Instagram is kind of, for me, this particular style of images is very much focused on the Instagram platform. For some reason, travel brands absolutely love it. Now, I'm going to say here that what I say is my personal opinion only. It's not fact. I personally don't like it. It's not a style of content that I can relate to in any way. I think as a photographer, you do so much work and so much practice in ensuring balanced images and getting your sky exposed correctly. For me, using filters and those sort of things has taken a long time to kind of be able to use properly. So I personally don't like this style of content at all. I don't like my skies to be white. I like to see either the cloudy color or a blue sky. But in saying that, I actually spoke about this with my partner during the week. So from a female's point of view, she absolutely loves it. For her, she can kind of imagine being in those images. A couple of examples here. Please, guys, don't shoot us for mentioning you. So Jason Charles Hill, Levi Caliballan, and Christian Schaefer. Now, these guys are all on Instagram. Very great content. Jason Charles Hill in particular, hugely successful in what he's done. My partner loves that style of content. So she looks at my images and tells me I'm too arty-farty in what I do, and that she can't imagine herself in an image where the water is silky smooth and the clouds have been shot with a 5-minute exposure and make them streak across the sky. She can't imagine herself being there. So yeah, there's definitely a market for this style of content, and it's hugely successful. I mean, travel companies love it. The lifestyle photography segment loves it. I personally don't like it. It's just my personal choice. What about you?
Well, one of the first things I teach my students in workshops is how to control highlights and how to not blow out the sky and how to have a nice balanced histogram. But saying that, once you actually learn it, you can also know that it's not necessary to always have that control. And just having a look at these images from those feeds that we mentioned, there are a lot of blown out skies where the sky looks white, but you can still see in some of the reflections that there is a blue sky and clouds in there. And these images work. They're not bad images. There's nothing that is unappealing about them. I still think they're fantastic pieces of work. And as you're saying, your partner said, you can imagine yourself in them. And I wouldn't personally sort of make that or do this style of photography, but that's just me. And it's obvious that people like it and they work. And that's what photography is about, especially in a commercial sense, is to produce images that people want to see.
Yeah, and that's it. I think that obviously if somebody didn't like them, there wouldn't be a market for this style of content. I mean, there wouldn't be people out there getting 20 and 30,000 likes on their images because of it, But as a photographer, and as I suppose in many ways, I can't really say the word purist, but in terms of technique, for me, it just almost goes against everything that I've tried to achieve within photography. It kind of goes everything that you try to learn and a lot of the equipment that I bought to try to achieve as well in terms of filters and things to kind of balance your sky. So now almost on the exact opposite end of the scale, but again, very similar, is kind of the crushed blacks and film look that Instagram is again popularized. VSCO as an app is kind of, it's hugely popular within the travel and lifestyle segment. So I mean, there's two types of shots where the super contrasty, almost high-key skies against the crushed black faded film looks. There's a huge market for it. It's just not my personal taste and just not something that I can really relate to in the type of content that I like to look at every day. So
yeah, these, as well, if you have a look at either mine or Tassigrammer's feeds, you'll see that they are vastly different from this travel style. But then again, these probably photographers that don't have the opportunity to really carry around a tripod and put on filters, and it's just traveling around, taking quick handheld snaps. And one thing you want to be sure of when you're doing that is to make sure that your main subject is correctly exposed. That may be a person standing in front of a lake or some buildings, and it doesn't necessarily matter whether the sky is blown out if your subject that you're focusing on is correctly exposed. Because if your sky is nice and blue and contrasty, but you can't see the person in the image because they're dark and in shadow, then there's not much point in getting a shot like that.
No, definitely. And I think that, again, comes down to your shooting technique. I think for me, when I've got a high exposure difference between the sky and the foreground, I tend to use exposure compensation on my camera, even at handheld, and kind of knowing that my cameras are good enough, under the right conditions to bring out the foreground or the detail within the foreground, just lifting your shadows and adjusting your curves, really. So for me, as I say, my own personal taste I would prefer to have my sky in balance, and very much on the other end of the scale, those faded looks where you on your curves, you literally just lift the bottom left hand corner or the very bottom shadow up by 25% and really what we would call crush blacks, and add a fade to the shot. That particular style of content, again, is very much Instagram focused, and it's taken off because of Instagram. There's a huge market for it, absolutely a huge market for it. I've actually tried to shoot both of these styles, and I've gone out specifically to try and replicate them, and I can't do it. It just doesn't suit the style of content that I produce in any way. And I've literally tried to copy some of the shots of guys like Ichiban. He's a fantastic photographer, great filmmaker. All those, in visiting Russell Falls here, I've literally tried to replicate some of the shots that he had, just for my own knowledge of how it's done. I just can't do it. It just doesn't work for me. Probably doesn't work because I know that I'm not going to do anything with the shot, even if it did work anyway. It's just not my something I would post anywhere and use. But there's a massive market for it, and for some reason, brands love it. Brands absolutely eat it up. So
maybe I'll have a go at editing some of my shots to look like that style, and maybe put it on the Project RAWcast Instagram feed and see whether I can get noticed or get featured on some of the travel hubs.
I think we should crush the blacks and put the high contrast into the sky.
I'll go crazy on it.
Super high whites on the sky with a nice faded film look. That might work. So
I'll see how I go.
So Hamish, there's our answer for you. Hopefully we don't get shot by the people we've mentioned there. And again, as we say, incredibly successful photographers. There's nothing personal or any. It's just our personal taste in content. And I'm sure they probably look at our images and say, that's not what we see and that's not what we like. So.
It's too colourful. Exposure's too long. Yeah.
or you use the tripod.
Yeah, it's too over-processed.
Look at one of those guys that I mentioned earlier on. I actually had a conversation that said 99% of my shots are shot with a tripod, and he looked at me and screwed his face up and said, why?
Yeah.
So, look, each to their own, I suppose. So
yeah, they're hugely successful people, and they've got fantastic images, and it's just a different style to what we're used to, but it works. People love it. Yeah.
All right. So, look, we've got some more questions that have come in over the week. One from Christian Naki on Instagram. So he's actually asked us, what are our limits on editing photos, firstly? And secondly, is how do we remove sand from a tripod? So, look, you're the editing and Photoshop genius, so why don't you kick this one off?
There are no limits. Well,
as long as it doesn't have dust spots.
Yeah. Well, I don't go full digital art with my images, but I don't have a set limit and say, I won't take it any further. I'll have a look at an image. I'll have an idea of what I want, a vision for the end product, and I'll edit to that. And I feel like I've got my own particular style and way that I edit images, and I'll do whatever's necessary to get to that final look that I'm wanting to achieve. So I don't really have a particular limit, and I'll just, use whatever I can to get whatever image I'm after.
For sure. I think it just depends on the image as well. We'll put up a little link to this. During the week, we had a bit of a look online, and we found some images of Tom Selleck photoshopped into waterfalls and nature scenes with sandwiches. Now, this was interesting. And look, if somebody entered this into one of our competitions each week, then this may actually be a winner. But look, Tom Selleck, for some reason, has started to show up in all these scenes with waterfalls, with all sorts of sandwiches, and
I just say that
hilarious.
I just say that this is not done well, but it's done so well.
No, it's deliberately designed to look quite corny and quite cheesy. Cheesy sandwiches. But look, this to me is obviously to the extreme, and this is certainly not something I would do to my images. But I tend to not add anything into my scenes. Maybe a bird or two. I've been known to Photoshop a couple of birds into my sky every now and then. And thank you to Adding for pointing it out every time I do it. But look, he's
good like that.
No, he is good like that. Look, Adding, mate, if you want to know something about your images, he's happy to tell you, which is quite helpful sometimes. But look, if Tom Selleck with sandwiches in waterfalls, that's probably a bit to my extreme. But quite happy to kind of remove objects or remove stray sticks from waterfalls or look, it just depends on the image itself. But look, I'm quite a huge fan of the autumn effect in skies. I love the kind of dreamy, ethereal look that gets introduced into water when you kind of add that little blur to the water. I'm a huge fan of nice, bright, vibrant colours in my scene. So vibrancy and saturation is not something I'm too scared to add. I get it wrong occasionally. I get the white balance wrong quite often. Thank you for my stupid colour blindness. But look, yeah, there's no real limits. And I think if you place limits on yourself in terms of your content, you may be kind of putting barriers up to say that, there's rules around your own content creation. And that's fine if you've got your own personal choice in the way you like images, but I don't think there should be any limits or barriers to what you do with your own images. It's your own personal taste and it's your own artwork. So
I think that if anything, the limit should be on just images can look over processed in a bad way. And I think I've had a look at some of the images that I've spent an hour or two on and then looked at my original and thought, I've really just done that horribly, and I'll just scrap everything that I've done. I won't even try and save it. I'll just get rid of it and start again. Because if you're just slowly adding effects or changing little things over time, you don't notice how far you've actually taken it. So I do have a limit on if it looks good or not. And if I've overdone it, made something too sharp, really just made the colors look a bit unnatural, then I guess that's a limit in a way, but it's not something that I set at the start and said, I'll only go to this point. It's just, I've just taken an image too far and I'll scrap it and start again.
For sure. I'm not a huge fan of the really heavily over-processed HDR look.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the Photomatics style, 7 images. I love HDR images in terms of when they're done well and they're blended properly and you've got full dynamic range across the entire image. But those really heavily over-processed HDR, well, images that HDR is kind of well known for is not really something that appeals to me either, and kind of somewhere that I probably wouldn't go with my own images. But again, there's guys out there who do those really well as well. So
yeah, so how about we move on to removing sand from tripods?
All right, Christian, I'm going to say this straight up. I can't remember the last time I removed sand from my tripod.
You just get a new one each time, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do actually get new ones each time, which is maybe not a bad thing. But look, it's not hard to do at all. It's actually quite easy to do, and particularly carbon fiber. It's probably a good thing to do it. I mean, sand's pretty damaging to carbon fiber, but it depends on the type of tripod you've got. But if we're talking about the kind of little O-ring lock nuts that are quite common now in tripods, where you kind of twist them and the legs just expand, the O-rings themselves will come undone. I mean, you just unscrew them, and each leg, typically 3 or 4 sections for each leg, can come apart. You wash them out, dry them off, add some WD-40 to it, or some sort of lubricant. Some of the tripod brands have actually got their own brand of lubricant. I know Gitzo do. You can go to Gitzo and kind of buy this silicone lubricant that they offer, and kind of just dry it off and lube it up and put it back together. I mean, it's not hard to do at all, and there's plenty of tutorials out there for it. When's the last time you did yours? I reckon the Manfrotto would be a little bit harder to pull apart.
There is a few screws and things to undo and take apart, but most of the time I don't worry about it too much. If the mechanisms are starting to get a bit stiff, I'll take it apart and clean it. But I don't really worry too much if it sounds a bit scratchy, if I'm noticing scratches on it. As long as it still works, it's fine. But I'll take all the screws apart and make sure I don't lose them, and just give it a good clean out with either a hose or a couple of towels as well, just to wipe it out. Yeah, just make sure everything's nice and clean, and trying to keep salt water off it, as if you do have metal parts as well, they can tend to rust up a bit. And pretty sure you can buy each individual part for Manfrotto tripods. Yep. So if you do get some that are starting to get a bit rusty or look a bit corroded, you can swap them out for new ones.
I think most brands do. Manfrotto, Sarui, Gitzo, any of those, the major brands for their, slightly mid to more expensive tripods, you can definitely buy new components. A lot of the newer tripods, so, and an example here, some of the higher end Saruis and also the Gitzo. I've used both brands. I currently use Gitzo, but they actually offer waterproof O-rings or waterproof seals, so you don't actually get water and sand inside them. Again, kind of, higher up in terms of budget to buy them, but long term, the warranties and guarantees that are offered as well on them, 5 and 10 year warranties, are worth the investment into a tripod, particularly if you're going to go and stick it in water. I do all the time. I mean, I pretty much just walk to a beach, walk straight out, waist deep in water, plug my tripod straight down, and that's where I'm shooting. Or in waterfalls, the best vantage points, or the best compositions, are quite often right in the middle where the water's flowing straight towards you. So I spend a lot of time in water. So I've kind of gone and invested a little bit more money into this particular tripod, or the one that I'm using now, specifically for that reason. Is I know full well what sort of conditions I'm shooting in. It just means that I don't have to go and pull it apart. I mean, it's probably a good idea to still do it, just to keep them, the silicone lube on them, so that they're still flowing smoothly. But I kind of hope that I don't have to worry about sand and water inside these new ones. So,
all right. So I think we've covered that. And sand out of a tripod, just take it apart, clean it, put it back together.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, should talk. Let's weather conditions that can affect. I mean, mate, I've just been through some bad times this week. Bad times and good times, actually. I've literally just today come back from a trip to one of the newest accommodation properties here in Tassie to go and do some photography for them, and was snowed in. So that was fantastic. I mean, we're in what are we in now? The third week of October, so pretty late in spring, and here in Tassie, it still feels like it's winter. I wasn't really expecting that, which was pretty interesting. I've literally just frozen. I'm sitting in front of a heater right now trying to thaw myself out, because I wasn't really expecting the conditions that we faced.
Yeah, your stories were looking quite white and snowy, and even so you're having a snowball fight, so that looks
yeah, we were. We had a bit of a snowball fight. I actually had a problem with my drone out there as well, because the batteries were too cold. I literally couldn't fly, like didn't want to take off. Yesterday when it did take off, it decided to kind of skits out midair. Thankfully, it didn't crash or anything, but the batteries just couldn't get up to temperature to kind of do what it needed to do. But also, look, earlier in the week, and you may have heard our introduction where I wanted to punch Kieran in the face. I really don't actually want to punch him in the face, by the way. It's he's a nice guy.
Might improve my looks.
but part of the same weather front that came through, we had quite a lot of wind and rain come through on Friday morning, right when I was supposed to be up in a helicopter for the third time in a row. My flight has been rescheduled. Thankfully for tomorrow, which is great, because it looks like we're going to have some fantastic weather. But how frustrating is it to have weather conditions affect your photography all the time? I mean, I don't know whether you get it so much up there, but I get it here all the time in Tassie. So.
Well, Melbourne's notorious for its 4 seasons in a day, and it can be a bit challenging and a bit frustrating as well when you plan to head out and it's nice, clear blue skies or just patchy cloud, and then suddenly you get a storm come through. But I've had it where storms and rain have actually improved conditions, where you can get really interesting and unique kinds of photos. One of our Great Ocean Road workshops, we had rain that was heading straight for us around sunset at the 12 Apostles, and it looked fantastic. We got a bit wet afterwards, but we still managed to get some images that were, unique and different. So it can improve conditions and just make for a more interesting looking image if you make the effort to go out when it may not be the best conditions.
Yeah, you probably don't have the weather extremes that we have up there as we do here. I mean, you may do when you're a little bit further up in the highlands up there, but we, when it decides to snow here, it snows. There's not much else you can really do. The roads get shut. You either can't get out or you can't get to somewhere unless you've got a beastie 4-wheel drive, that kind of allows you. I mean, we drove up to where we went yesterday, and we were listening all the way up, and there were road closures. And one of the road closures is right where we needed to go as well. Thankfully, we ended up getting through, but those sort of things happen more often as not here in Tassie, and it's really quite frustrating to do so.
Can't fly a helicopter?
No, can't fly it when they just won't take off. And a little while ago, I had something very similar where I had a boat trip planned down in the southwest wilderness region of Tassie. It was a 3-day trip. We were reliant on a particular company here to fly us down to actually go and meet this boat. We arrived at the airport terminal at 8:30 in the morning, and at about 8:31 in the morning, they cancelled the flight. So we'd a group of us had all planned to kind of come back on this boat over the next 3 days around the southwest wilderness and do quite a bit of photography around there. And the flight got cancelled, so we couldn't actually go and meet the boat. The owner of the boat couldn't even go and meet his own boat, so that was a bit of a pain in the bum for everybody. I'm hoping that we don't kind of face those conditions in a few weeks on the overland track. It's going to be pretty tough to deal with if they do, but man, I'm starting to get annoyed with these weather conditions.
I think the lesson here is don't go shooting in Tasmania. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, just live in Queensland, where you don't get affected so much by weather.
Yeah, they don't have cyclones or anything.
No, not at all. No. But yeah, it's kind of a bit frustrating. I'm not sure which is more frustrating, the weather or dust spots. Weather causing dust spots,
or just spray on your filters or lenses.
Well, that's what I just had that all this weekend because it was snowing. I couldn't even put a filter on the front of the lens. Had to shoot with my lens hoods on, which is all well and good, but I couldn't do my fancy long exposure shots.
So all yours are just going to be blown out skies and
just super high contrast. Might even crush the blacks on the snow. But yeah, no, it's
so you didn't get any shots like the Pano Awards winner with the trees and the snow?
No, I'd love to. No, but yeah, it's pretty frustrating to happen, and it happens quite a lot down here in Tassie, which is kind of a shame because we do quite a lot of epic things that can potentially be impacted on by weather. So.
Well, I think we've been speaking for quite a long time and probably have other things to get off and do.
I've got to go and defrost a little bit and go and get my cameras ready for tomorrow. So,
if you actually get the chance to go up,
we're going. If not, I'm just going to fly myself.
Fair enough. So, just like to thank Creative for Life on the Central Coast again for being this week's episode sponsor and offering 3 prints to our listeners, which is just fantastic.
Definitely, and the winner of that's going to, I'm sure, appreciate seeing one of their own shots printed 40 inches wide. It's quite a good thing to kind of see your shots printed. And so, 40 inch, 30 inch and 20 inch print being given away, first, second and third. Send in some images that make us smile, please. We'll be looking at that and announcing it again on Sunday, the 30th of October at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time.
Excellent. And check us out on Patreon as well.
Terrific. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm off.
Cool. All right.
I'll talk to you later.
We'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.